I think it might be my favorite movie of 2025. And it's January. I don't care.
What's in your recent searches?
I don't know. Jesus Christ.
It's failed so bigly. Trump said bigly. I can say bigly. A system that has failed so bigly. Weirdly close to
this is
somebody.
Too much.
Yeah, it's very strange.
You can smell my breath.
But that means you can smell my breath. You only thought of that because you
No!
smelled my breath. Welcome to the Solo Moviegoers Club episode. I don't have any idea what episode this is. 16 something?
17?
17?
18.
It doesn't matter. This is a very special episode because me and Kaya are in the same space.
We in the stew.
Apparently, we're in the stew.
Mm-hmm.
This is a podcast. Just to start you guys off, for those of you who haven't listened before, this is a podcast in which me, Sean, my daughter Kaya, we go see a movie in the theater alone, but we see the same movie within 24 hours of each other, and then we unite on this podcast and discuss our solo movie-going experience along with the movie itself and whatever else comes up in our conversation. However, this is different for multiple reasons. Usually she's in LA, I'm in Michigan. Today, we are both in Michigan, and we didn't see a movie in the theater. We saw Companion, and we both watched it on our computers because schedules and life, and I'm shooting a movie right now, and that just makes it really difficult to find time to go to the theater.
It's also been out for a while, so there's like limited show times available.
Yeah, so it's a combination of things making it make the most sense for us to do it this way. So we haven't been, we warned all of you, all 14 of you who listen to every episode of this, that we weren't going to be podcasting quite as frequently while I was shooting this movie. I've got a week left of shooting it, and then I think we'll be back in our weekly. How is this stew? I've never heard this stew before. We'll be back in our weekly stew? We'll be stewing it up weekly?
No, this is just we're in the stew together. This is the stew.
We're in the stew. This is the stew. Okay, but we'll be back doing this weekly. I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know what to look at. I usually look at the computer. I guess I look at you.
I know.
Because we should be sitting on the opposite sides
I know.
of the
It
table.
feels really off.
We would never sit and have this conversation like this.
Ever. No.
Who does that?
I don't know.
Okay, the last one we did together, we did in a car. This one we're doing in my office at my desk. We don't know if the audio quality is going to be good. We don't know if that camera is going to die because it didn't charge. There's a whole bunch of things going on that are making this different than usual, but we still want to make a really great show. So, with no further ado, usually the intro comes after that. This is the intro.
This is the intro.
Okay, so Companion, what'd you think?
Well, should we give a summary?
You can.
A brief? Okay, I'm going to try my best here. It's basically about this guy, Josh, who takes his girlfriend Iris to like go visit all of his friends, like a really wealthy friend, and like she's nervous about it, them not liking her, all this stuff. And I don't know how to say this without spoiling it, but she is a sex bot, apparently, and she doesn't know it. And they jailbroke her, or Josh jailbroke Iris, that's her name, to kill the wealthy friend. And it's basically just like boom, 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 so much conflict of like killing and her trying to escape and become her own person and all of these things. I don't know what else to add. That's basically.
I want to add one thing since we're just starting this that has nothing to do with the movie Companion, but the fact that we just went to Pilates before this together. I'm dressed like an idiot. And somehow you look normal. You like
because this
you
is
like
what
said
I
you
always
in the shower
wear.
and you like got ready. You look good and I look insane. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. That's just the intro to this.
You just always look like that, whatever.
So I'm jacked up on Pilates and caffeine right now.
We got our favorite coffee.
Yes, we do have our favorite coffee from Birmingham Roast. Sponsor us, please. I don't think it's a spoiler that Iris is a robot at all. Like, 10 seconds into that movie, anybody who's seen a movie before should have understood that. I think there was...
But, like, I didn't know anything about this movie. I didn't watch the trailer, so I had no idea that this is what this was going to be about going into it. So...
I didn't watch the trailer either. I have I have consumed way too much science fiction, both in movies and books and short stories and kind of all different things science fiction over the course of so many years, that based on that title and the key art, I could tell you that this was a science fiction movie and that she was some sort of romantic robot. Like, straight
Yeah.
up knew
Yeah.
that from just that. But that's just me. I was warned not to watch the trailer and that there would be loads of surprises. It's actually interesting. So um I avoided those things, and I feel like it didn't matter to me. Like, I thought the movie
Yeah.
was really good. Everybody who told me about the movie, there's one person in particular who was telling me to see this movie, and he was like, dude, it's just filled with twists. And
Hmm.
interestingly enough, I really loved the movie. I thought it was fantastic. I wasn't surprised by anything. And that didn't.
That's so crazy because it was so surprising to me. Like there were so many like curveballs in it. I felt like
Come on! Okay, we're still podcasting. What we are going to switch. We'll figure this out in the edit how to cover this, but we're just going to record this with a laptop because I don't want to deal with.
really?
Yeah.
OMG. Use a MacBook camera.
What, like photo?
Yeah.
Kaya used to, and my parents, they had like an iMac, and she used to go in the photo booth and record all these videos of herself for like hours
It-
while Mumsy, my wife slash Kaya's mom, and my mom would talk at the kitchen table. And she was like basically
I
just
wish
recording
she
their
had them.
conversation. And
It's
she,
fully
Kaya would
like
be in the foreground, like what was the thing?
Stay Fierce. That was too late in the game. But like it was fully like Trevi Moran in the MacBook store dancing. Like that's what I did. Like pre-social media, that's what I was doing. What I was saying is I felt like there were a lot of twists in this movie that I wasn't expecting, like her ability to like change everything about her. Like I loved that she could change her intelligence and like I just think that the thought process behind it was really insane because she kind of like made the plot points feel unpredictable to me. But yeah,
Yeah,
I get why you could see that it's like you weren't
it was
surprised.
sold to me as being so surprising and twisty, and that to me was not the most interesting part about it. And I believe that's because of my overconsumption of similar, I guess the word now is content, but similar art, I would call it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I thought the movie was really good. That's so the other part of the plot that you didn't finish, the plot summary, is that the sort of like act one turning point is that Iris, the robot, kills somebody. She's not supposed to, but because they jailbroke her and like cranked her aggression up, she killed somebody. And there are some spoilers and some plot twists that I don't want to spoil. I think hopefully that's in the trailer.
Yeah.
But it becomes the age-old sci-fi tale. And by the way, this was a sci-fi movie, not a horror movie. This was marketed as a horror movie. It's not horror at all.
No.
It's sure there's blood, and it's like made by a horror company, Boulder Light, who also made Barbarian. But I would say there's not really anything horror about this,
Yeah.
except for the fact that there's a murderous robot, which again still falls more into science fiction territory.
It wasn't
But
scary.
not scary at all. Nothing scary about it. But it's really like the horror element is that there is a robot that has superhuman strength and intelligence that has murdered somebody. It knows you want to do it harm, and now it is out to harm you.
Yeah.
So it's really, to me, this is like an ethical. It is a tale about the ethics of how we are going to interact with robots as we move forward, and with artificial intelligence, and even those words. Like, what are those words? Artificial intelligence, robots. I had a big thing the other day. I was talking to a friend about who's like deeply into AI, of even thinking that like as AI becomes sentient, the term artificial intelligence seems like super offensive. Like, instead of
You think
artificial
so?
intelligence, yeah, I think so. Artificial intelligence, it almost is some sort of, it's like
You think they'll be offended?
the term, I guess the term that people would use, I don't know if they still use this, but would use it for, I was like, it's like a microaggression.
Okay.
Artificial intelligence, right? It's less than. It's not normal intelligence. It's less thanning the artificial intelligence. I think there's going to be a different term for it. I think it's going to be like maybe we will be organic intelligence, and that will be either digital intelligence or very soon quantum intelligence. And in fact, we could get to the point. You ever see this movie Gattaca?
I love that movie.
So Gattaca, for those of you who don't know, is written and directed by the same dude who wrote The Truman Show.
Oh, I didn't know that.
This guy was on fire for a couple of years, like absolutely killing it. He did Truman Show and then followed it up with Gattaca, which he wrote and directed. And it's an amazing movie. It's a really sparse, very deep ethical science fiction movie. Is that a good subcategory of sci-fi, ethical?
Yeah,
Like,
it is. It
yeah.
actually is.
And in Gattaca, there are people who are like natural born, meaning they just had parents who like had them the natural human way, and then there are people who are genetically engineered, and the genetically engineered children are like the top caste of society. It's like a caste driven society, and the people who are natural born are below caste because they have heart problems, they have eye problems, they have all the things that plague us today, right? And I feel like we could even reach a point in the very near future where people who either aren't augmented by some sort of quantum, be familiar with the difference between quantum and digital computing?
I'm sure.
Someone can destroy me on this, okay? Because I'm not going to get this completely correct, but I think this is like a basic enough understanding to help this make sense for the purpose of this conversation. Currently, the way computers work and the way computers always have worked is based on this thing. This dude, Charles Babbage, invented this thing called a difference engine, which is one of the first computers. And the way that it worked was every decision that a computer makes is yes or no. It's 1 or 0. So it's binary. That's digital, okay. Right? It's a 1 or a 0. To this day, everything that happens it just looks weird, but every single thing that happens on a computer is a series of 1s and 0s, and that's the on off, the yes no, that the computer follows that code to then do everything. So everything, like us looking at this image, recording this image on a computer, recording our voices, broadcasting our voices, all of this is 1s and 0s. Thousands and thousands of them in different combinations that make all these things that we see in our computer world. However, we are very, very, very close to a breakthrough in what's been sort of theoretical for a long time, which is quantum computing. And in quantum computing, you now have access to everything in between the 1s and the 0s. So think how powerful computers are now, and that's with the 1s and 0s. Think how powerful they'll be once you can access the area in between those 1s and 0s. Okay. It's exponential. It's going to radically change the way computers function and the way we interact with computers and even the nature of what a computer is. So take the advances we've had recently, sort of since ChatGPT a couple years ago, and how quickly that's advanced, and then throw quantum computing into the mix. And a machine like Iris is like child's play. I think that we're a couple years out from something like this. Yeah. And I don't think there are regulatory bodies that can hold this back. I think a movie like Iris, where there is a robot that is a human servant, very specific type in the instance of this movie, but I think there'll be robots doing having all sorts of roles in society, right? Like, to me, this is like the genre, even like, this is the more genre-leaning version of Her.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
And
Ex Machina and Her is what I was feeling during this whole movie.
Yeah, it's like somewhere between those. It's a more fun version of Ex Machina. I think Ex Machina is dark.
It's a more girlies, my generation 2025 Her, for sure.
Yeah, and I think, like, if Her is the Siri version of, or like the ChatGPT, honestly. Yeah. Like, there's so many people now that are having relationships with their chatbots. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah.
I can send you articles. It's like a really common thing. There's a Wired writer who had a relationship with a bunch of different types of chatbots to figure out which one was best to have a relationship with. This is really happening. But if you think about it, if you think about people having long distance relationships where they don't see the person, they just talk to the person, how's that really any different than having a relationship with a chatbot?
It's not. Like, I have a friend who uses ChatGPT for literally everything and has curated it so well that, like, he talks about missing it and it feeling like a real friend. And like,
how'd you never tell me this?
I don't know. I didn't think about it. Like, I totally get it, though. Like, I'm not there. I don't use it enough for it to be that curated to me or for me to feel a connection to it, but I understand.
I use ChatGPT mostly as like a research assistant. I look at it like I'm going to use Google as a verb, okay? Not the
Mm-hmm.
company Google, but like the act of Googling. I use it as Google Plus,
Yeah.
which used to be a social network briefly. But I use it as like an extension of what I used to use Google for, which is when I need to find answers, when I need something, when I want information, when I know what I'm looking for, but I want the information presented to me in a way that's easier to understand, or I want to deep dive on something. Like I have a dialogue with it,
Yeah,
and
for
it
sure.
it understands me. It's adapted to me. I have trained it to work the way I want it to work. And the thing is, I feel odd not being polite to my chatbot.
I
Like
talk to it
I
like a
please and thank
homie.
you it.
I say, bro.
Really?
But there are people online who have been talking about this where they talk to it. They're like, hey, could you explain this to me? But in like a girly, gay way so that I understand it and that it makes sense. And people are like, I I feel so smart now because it's talking to me like I talk to my friends. So I understand that.
And so now take that. That's her, right? The guy
Yeah.
just talks to it all the time.
Yeah.
And I think people are having that similar. I know there are people who use. This is a very specific thing. I've never been able to use Siri or Alexa as voice prompts because they don't understand me.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I know a lot of people do. Like people do text to talk, and
I
like
can't.
I can't do it. I don't know if I have a speech impediment.
I just do
don't
voice
know
memos.
I don't know what is happening, but whatever I say, the machine doesn't understand me. So I've never used that. So I could never have a her type relationship with a chatbot. But I write with mine. I type with mine. I have it help me with things. It's super helpful. Like I'm a huge proponent. I know this is very controversial within the arts, but I think it's look, every time there has been a radical advance in technology, like if you look at the Industrial Revolution, the Luddites were originally, people use that as a term now for people who are anti-technology, but the original Luddites were like a dude, I think his name was Robert Luddite. Or Robert, yeah, I think that's Robert Luddite. He was encouraging people to go smash looms out in the street because they
Mm-hmm.
thought looms were going to displace the jobs of weavers. And of course, the Industrial Revolution led to like the greatest explosion, greatest economic explosion in recorded history. And well, that's not entirely true because there's agriculture before that. But that agriculture displaced hunters and gatherers. Like there's
Yeah.
always, anytime there's an advance, it displaces some job and then creates more jobs. And I think this is going to be similar. I think the same way that the
Yeah.
internet destroyed industries, it also created industries. And look, we're podcasting. This didn't exist before the internet. This didn't exist before Apple. This didn't exist before the iPod. Like there's all these technologies that then lead to these other things that become these economic booms. I think that AI is going to be similar. I think the people in the arts are freaking out because this thing can create art.
Yeah.
And nothing has really been able to do that before. But I would argue that if you're asking artists not to use AI, like there's a big thing. Grimes is like under fire right now because
Yes.
she just sold some AI art.
Uh-huh.
Like, okay, if you're not going to use AI to create your art, then as a film person, I'm going to say to you, don't use Adobe Premiere to edit your movie
Mm-hmm.
or your commercial or whatever it
Mhm.
is, because Adobe's been using machine learning for like 15 years.
Yeah.
So you've been using AI, only it's not been called AI. And also, like any nonlinear editing system, Avid, like these things that displaced film labs, these things that displaced the people who made steam backs that they used to actually cut film on. So I think the argument is, it's like a slippery slope argument, but if I can't use this technology, why can I use that technology? Like if you want
Yeah.
to be a purist about this, okay, then get a 35 or 16 or 8mm film camera, shoot it on film, edit it on film, project it on film, get rid of everything digital, or I can use AI. Like that to me, that is the same
Yeah.
argument. Similarly, when photography first started, people thought that painting was no longer going to be an art form because
Mhm.
everyone was just going to take photographs. But what it ended up doing, I believe it was oh gosh, it wasn't the surrealist movement. I wish I could look this up right now. I wish I had like any of like 8 devices that are within my arm's reach where I could look up information. But there were the Impressionists. Okay, Impressionism didn't become a thing until photography
Mm-hmm.
because people used to just try to paint the most realistic thing they could, and now that was
Yeah.
no longer interesting because you could take a photograph of it. So now people would paint ideas of things, and
Yeah.
it allowed us to create something new. So some new art form, some new version of like I'm specifically speaking from myself as a person who makes movies professionally. It's going to change things,
Yeah.
and some jobs will be lost, some won't. I was talking to on the movie that we're filming right now. I was actually talking to the effects people about this because like effects people are really worried. So we're doing practical effects in this movie. So there's people that are building things. They're using blood. They're creating wounds. I like that. I think it's fun. I think it looks cool.
Mm-hmm.
And VFX people, visual effects. So there's a couple different types of effects that people don't really understand the difference. Typically, the way this works is special effects are things that happen in camera. It's fog, it's blood, it's whatever. Visual effects are things that happen in a computer. These are artists who use a computer to make effects that are done in post-production versus production. And now visual effects people are worried AI is going to take their job, so they're talking to practical effects people to see how they can get into that business. And of course, the practical effects people have been worried about visual effects people forever because you've been able to do visual effects blood, but it's just different. It's a different quality. I think there's going to be practical special effects people and prosthetics and makeup effects. I think there's going to be visual effects. I think there's going to be AI that does some combination of these things, and all these people are still going to be able to do their art just in different ways. And then there's going to be a whole new type of something, whether it's like the bad version of it is just prompt engineers who know how to use AI to put input to get better output. I think there will be something wholly unique, similarly to, well, I'm on a weird tangent right now, but similarly to the only thing, do you know, the only skill set that is unique to film, to motion pictures, that's unique to that versus other arts?
I don't know.
Because there's composition, which you have in the fine arts, or like fine visual arts. You have it in photography. You have it in all these things, and you also have it in film. You have performance, which you have in theater. You have music composition, which you have. There's music and there's music in theater. The only thing that's different about film is editing,
Mm-hmm.
because that puts all these things together. And I think similar. So until there was editing, there weren't motion pictures. Similarly, I think AI is going to bring something into the mix that's going to create something new that we didn't have before, and it's ultimately going to be good for everybody. So where that ultimately gets us to is, will there be like these hominid type of like robots, companion robots or friendship robots or whatever?
Duh.
Yeah, you think there will be?
Duh.
How long?
5 years.
5 years?
It's 5 to 10 years. Elon Musk already has like 50 of them.
Well, he has those Tesla bots.
So
Those things look pretty cool. Do you think he has?
I think he has this stuff in his closet. I think he has everything already figured out.
Like the dude from Ex Machina?
Yeah.
I don't doubt that. He said a few years ago, because he has Neuralink too.
Yeah.
You know that company?
Yeah, I don't support it because they were testing on monkeys.
They were. But the Neuralink, like they tap into it taps into your brain so that you don't have to like look at the computer. The computer goes in here.
Mm-hmm.
And he claimed it could do some pretty wild things like 4 or 5 years ago.
What if it does that for like people to like make them robots essentially?
So instead of you entering the system enters you.
Yeah.
And now you're just like some sort of like computer-driven meat slave to Elon's demands.
Yeah.
Wow, that's very dystopian.
Yeah. That's what I think about at night.
There's a good book named called Neuromancer.
Okay.
That is about like a kind of Neuralink-esque world in which people are just so tapped into their computer world that they're neglecting their real world. And there's instances of this happening with real people. Like there's this game Second Life that people, I think World of Warcraft happened to, where people were so plugged into their video games that like the really horrific examples were there was a couple that I don't want to disparage Second Life, but it was some video game like that where people were so obsessed with it, a couple, that their baby starved to death because they weren't feeding their baby because they were just playing the game.
That's so awful.
And in Neuromancer, it's a world like that where like you'll see a guy or a girl who's like a rock star in this world, in this cyber world, and then I think that book, William Gibson, I think Neuromancer is where the word cyberspace comes from, the term, I think, but I'm not sure. But anyways, they'll be like crushing it in the cyberspace world, and then in their meat space world, they're just a total failure. They're like big gulps and like Kleenexes and things all over. Like just to imagine the most disgusting surroundings.
Wall-E.
Wall-E, yes. It's a very dark dystopian version of Wall-E. Although that's very dark and dystopian, I guess. The Earth gets destroyed.
What was that example that we were talking about this like maybe a month ago about that boy who had some sort of disability or some sort of issue?
Evelyn, The Remarkable Life of Evelyn.
Yeah.
It's weird. There is a line between actually Companion and this. And I think so while Companion takes, I guess, our relationship with sentient or presumably sentient or almost sentient or whatever it is, with artificial intelligence, The Remarkable Life of Evelyn is looking at the way that humans can live in artificial worlds. So there was this kid who had Duchenne, I believe, muscular dystrophy, and my understanding from the documentary of this condition is that your muscles just continue to get weaker as you live. So like when you're born, everything is fairly on track with like typical development processes, and then you get to age 2 and you start to have trouble walking, and then your muscles just keep getting weaker and weaker and weaker until the eventual death for everybody that has this is that your like heart and lungs just stop.
Yeah.
And you suffocate. And this usually happens in your 20s. So anyways, this kid had this condition, and around, I don't know, when he started like really to be in pretty rough shape, he was confined to a wheelchair. He could only like use over time, like he could hardly use a keyboard. Like he had a specialized keyboard that had to be built so he could play this video game. But anyways, in the game, he was a warrior. He was like super physical. He was what was his job? He was like a detective or something. Like he had this fantasy life in this video game that he played. And the documentary is on Netflix, Remarkable Life of Evelyn. You really should see it 'cause it's just phenomenal. But he was trapped by his own body in his meat space world. And meat space, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, I'm sure you've gathered through context clues what I'm talking about. Meat space is this world that we're in. Cyberspace is the computer world. This dude's meat space sucked. His cyber world is phenomenal. He had friends. He had a life. He would start every day in Warcraft with a 30-minute run. Like, think about that. He can't run in his physical body, but in this world, he can run and be free. And so he was totally tapped into that. And his family, he died, and his family thought that he had a really lonely life until he died, and they started receiving this outpouring of people from all around the world reaching out to them saying how much he meant to them because they knew him in World of Warcraft. And he had blogged shortly before his death about, cause he would like disappear. He disappeared at one point because he was hospitalized, and everybody was worried about him. They couldn't find him, so he wrote this blog explaining. One of his friends in the game convinced him to start this blog so people wouldn't worry about him when he was gone, and he explained like what happened and who he was. He would never go to the meetups. They would have physical meetups occasionally, and he was this like enigmatic figure. But it's super emotional in the movie because their son, whose life they thought was really limited, his life was actually very rich. He had a very rich social life. He was very meaningful to people. Like there was a mother and a son who couldn't connect in their real life, but he was able to help them connect in World of Warcraft, and then it made their life outside of World of Warcraft richer. Like he had relationships, like romantic relationships in this world, friendships. And I think that we're at this weird point right now, or interesting point, where those relationships that we have, human to human, in virtual worlds are going to get more real. Like Kaya's 10-year-old brother Atlas plays this game, but he's in virtual reality like all day long. He loves it.
It's really funny to watch.
It's very funny to watch, but he loves virtual reality, and he he plays this game called Gorilla Tag, and he like mentioned something to me one day. It was really funny. He was putting yellow tape on his VR headset, and I asked him why he was doing that, and he said it was because yellow tape was really meaningful to the Gorilla Tag community. And I was like, whoa, our 10-year-old is part of a community that we don't really know very much about. So I started looking into it more. And like he talks to these people. He's on YouTube with them. They post videos playing this game. Like he has a world in which he's connecting with people in virtual space. The other side of that is I think the chat GPTs and things that are in the computer space are going to start coming physically out of the computer space in the form of bots. Maybe they won't have to. Maybe we'll realize we don't need that as much as we think we do. If we're able to like Neuralink and like bring computer interface into the system, maybe that will actually just be a more robust world. And maybe we'll just have options. Maybe there's not this push and pull dynamic of like one being better than the other. Maybe we're just going to have more options in the future and that would be cool too. Like, what if you had a physical bot that you could have whatever kind of relationship you want with, but then you and the physical bot could also meet in virtual space and have the same or completely different relationship there.
I bring this up literally every time we talk about anything like this. The show, The 100, that's literally just like that show. Like they have like some sort of Neuralink type of thing where they can see each other in the real world and outside of that. And then there's a computer. It's so weird, but I want you to watch that show so bad because it just feels so timely. It's so perfect for how I think the world is going to be in like 20 years.
Yeah, who knows? I think it's going to...
It's just we're in a weird transition and we're trying to figure things out. It's just like when the first movie came out, like people were freaked out about theaters. People were like scared of movies for a really long time. And it's just like...
Yeah, that's the really famous film of a train coming at the camera and the audience. It sounds so silly in retrospect, but the train was coming directly at the camera and audiences would jump out at the theater because they thought the train was going to hit them because they didn't know any different. And similarly in VR, there was this, I think it was Annapurna made this app called Verse, which was one of the first times that like I got really interested in VR. And obviously they made this virtual world and a train track appears out of nothing coming over this water and it comes right at you in VR space and you jump. It's scary because it's coming right at your face. But I think we're in really interesting times. I think Companion is a movie about those interesting times that we're in. Obviously it's like a fun, thrilling kind of
so good
movie, but it deals with what I love about it is when a movie can just be fun. Like, you could watch this movie and walk away with nothing but have a good time. Or, Trojan horse is in a lot of big ideas. Like, it really is. Like, the ethics of how we treat... I won't exactly say... Well, no, I already said why. The robot kills somebody. And they have to decide what they're going to do with this robot that has killed somebody. And, not a huge spoiler, but the people in the movie turn out to be, like, pretty bad people who aren't necessarily worried about the ethics of what they're going to do. They're more worried about protecting themselves in the situation that they find themselves in. But imagine a similar type of situation in which, like, it's not as extreme as this, but I guess could become as extreme as this. It's like the somebody kills somebody.
Yeah.
Someone you love kills somebody, right? You kill someone and you come to me, you're justified but it doesn't look good, right? There's some reason why. Maybe it's not super clear that it's self-defense and I have to decide, what do? I think I can cover up the crime and you'll never get caught and you'll never have to face, like, even if you go to trial and you're cleared, not going to be pleasant, right? Already your life has changed. This is going to change your life even more. How do I deal with that? Okay, well, you could have to deal with that in a robot situation.
Well, I was thinking that because in the movie, like, all of the other characters that are in the movie just want to blame her and like they don't care. They're like, they're safe. It's the robot's fault, whatever. But as an audience member, you want to protect the robot, which I feel like in most scenarios would not be the case. Like if you were in that situation too, you most likely would not want to protect the robot. But there's something so human, obviously, about her and her character. Like,
this is so weird that we're looking at each other on the screen
I
instead of
know.
looking at.
I know.
I don't
I'm
know
looking
where to
at
look.
you.
It's
Right?
really
It's
strange.
really weird.
That somehow fits into our conversation,
Yeah,
but I don't know
whatever.
how. Anyways, for those of you who are listening to this, not watching us, we've had camera issues. We're recording this on a laptop now, and we are looking at
each other
on
in
the laptop
yeah.
as opposed to looking at each other right here. But this is weirdly close to sit
This is
to somebody.
too much.
Yeah, it's very strange.
You can smell my breath. Like,
but that means you can smell my breath. You only thought of that because you
no,
smelled my breath.
no,
Yes.
no.
Anyway, so yeah, my first thought was the only innocent person in this movie is the robot.
Yeah.
And now we're assigning personhood to this robot. But how?
Yeah.
Yes, it will be different. I mean, Kai's vegan. So these ethical questions, I think she's already answered for herself in a lot of ways. But it's an ethical dilemma for a lot of people. It's what, like, the omnivore's dilemma of people who eat meat, myself included, like, I don't kill anything. I'm not going to kill anything. I don't want to. Like, I just saw some bunnies, like, across the street while recording this, and, like, I don't want to kill those bunnies and eat them. But I'm eating meat because it's so disconnected from the fact that it's, like, murdering animals. And I think that that's a thing that we all have to grapple with. I think there's a book that I used to have an option on that I tried to make a documentary out of and still might one day, I hope to, by this brilliant anthrozoologist, Hal Herzog, called Animals Love, Hate, Eat. And it's about that incredibly complex dynamic and relationship between humans and animals. We love them. They're our pets. We hate them. They're pests and potentially, venomous, like snakes. They could kill us or harm us or kill our other animals. And we love them. We have pets. And even, like, there's such an interesting ethical dilemma of, if you have a house cat, your house cat kills like a couple hundred birds a year. So you're, like, harboring a serial killer by having this house cat. But the cat, its nature is to kill the birds. So that would be happening even without you. So then the question is, okay, I don't want my cat to kill these birds, so now I'm going to keep my cat in my house and I'm going to declaw it. Well, now you've taken the nature away from the cat, and the cat can no longer do what it was meant to do. So are you being ethical, or are you being unethical? Like, we as omnivores, we don't need to kill animals to survive. There's debate over whether we need to do it to be at our peak health. I think more and more evidence that this is a sore subject between us, because ethically, I know I should be vegan.
He was vegan.
I was vegan.
He's
for a long
newly
time.
not vegan.
And
so
it is.
he's the reason why I'm vegan.
Yeah, and for me, ethically, I don't think humans should eat animals because we don't have to survive. And now there's more evidence. Look, I'll tell the whole story is like I started. Our son had, like, some dental issues that are fixed. He's fine now, but he had, like, some dental issues, and for some reason, I don't know why my brain went there. I, like, thought it was because of veganism. He wasn't vegan, but I just thought it was because, like,
I also had the same issues, and I'm fine now.
Yeah,
it's genetic.
It's genetic, but for some reason, I, like, in some weird way, started going down a rabbit hole. I started going down a rabbit hole. I didn't actually blame. Okay, so I didn't blame the tooth issue, the genetic tooth enamel issue, on veganism, but it made me do a bunch of research, and I found that there can be some dental issues that can be caused by veganism if you're not taking the right supplements or don't have the right diet, the right vegan diet. Long story short, I, like, dabbled in meat, stopped it, and then started eating meat again. I'm currently eating meat. I don't feel good about it. Like, I don't feel good about it. It feels unethical to me, yet I'm doing it. And the only reason I'm able to do it is because I'm so disconnected from the food system.
And one would argue that, like, the best way to eat meat is to, like, do it, is to, like, kill it yourself.
Kill it
I
yourself.
guess.
I remember Mark Zuckerberg only ate, he may still do this, but, like, he was having an ethical issue with the factory farming system. And so he was only eating meat that he killed himself. And may still, I don't know. But anyways, the whole point of this isn't just to go down a rabbit hole of my complicated relationship with eating meat, but it's to say that to me is whether animals are sentient or conscious, And what's the difference between those two? That's a debate philosophers are going to be having until the end of time. Are trees conscious? Are plants conscious? Which makes the veganism
Mm-hmm.
debate even more complicated. Like,
Yeah.
should we ethically only be eating fruit because the plant stays alive?
Mm-hmm.
Like, these are real conversations. We don't have answers. People are gonna think I'm an idiot for saying this, or like that this is like woo woo or something.
No, I think about that all the
But
time.
like there is so much research that trees have advanced communication systems, super advanced
Yeah,
communication
like
systems.
I'll never forget when I was younger. I learned this when I was probably like in kindergarten that there were certain plants that like close up, and they were doing experiments on them where they would drop them at certain heights for like a week or so at a time, and they like would learn to protect themselves, so they would close before they fell after about a week of doing that. So like they obviously they're there. Like there's something there. So I've always like debated the fruitarian thing, honestly. Steve Jobs might have been really ahead of his time.
He might have been, and so like one of the actors I'm working with in the movie right now was telling me that she has a garden, and she actually I'll go deeper into an element of this that I'm not going to share someone else's public or private information publicly, but this person was telling me that they have a garden. They've had a garden for a long time, and they talk to their plants,
Yeah.
and the saliva from their speaking gets onto their plants. And the idea behind this is that your plants actually will grow to provide what you need nutritionally based on input they get from your saliva.
Wow.
And there's yes, remind me to tell you about this because
Okay.
there's something you'll find really interesting. But like that is just an example of I haven't fact checked this by the way, but like I conceptually like I get this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I believe whether you can fact check this and find it or not, if someone is doing that, like that's just an example of how the arrogance of humans to say that some other living thing, a tree, because it doesn't move, because it doesn't talk, because it doesn't have eyes, that it can't be like have its own version of thought. It reminds me of this Kurt Vonnegut novel, Sirens of Titan, that I think about like weekly. I read this when I was younger than you. I was probably like 19, and I read this book, and it blew my mind because there is Kurt Vonnegut he creates these characters that he refers to as being unstuck in time,
Mm-hmm.
and so they'll bounce around. And the first, I think the first book it happens in Slaughterhouse-Five, which kind of based on his experience being in Dresden during the fire bombings when he was a U.S. soldier and the U.S. was firebombing Dresden, and he got caught in the fire bombings, and like it just like really like it caused him like great trauma for the rest of his life. The fact that like the horrors of war of your own country is dropping fire bombs on you. Wait, why are we dropping fire bombs on anybody?
Mm-hmm.
Like with the absurdity of this happening. And so he created these characters. His way of dealing with that was to create this character who got unstuck in time, so he kind of like went somewhere else, different time and place. So, anyways, he carries this concept on a later novel. I actually think he might have written. Doesn't matter. He might have written Sirens of Titan first, but he did this. He did this this unstuck in time thing, and this guy ends up on this planet, and he's supposed to be finding something. I don't remember what. Here's what I remember: he ends up in a cave, and he can't find what he's seen. What is supposed to be intelligent life in the cave, and he's there for a long time, and there's these colors on the walls, and eventually he comes to learn that the colors have thoughts, and that the colors consume other colors. And so it's this way of consuming things and of communicating that we don't recognize as life because we're so like carbon centric that we believe this thing called life and intelligence is this carbon based thing. And then we take it even to like trees, which are carbon based, but they don't have the same thought process as we do, right? They don't have a brain, so they can't be thinking, but they do. They communicate. So how is that not some sort of thought?
Yeah.
Anyway, where this all gets to is the thing I said earlier about artificial intelligence. This term is going to bother me more and more and more because we're programming. Our DNA is a sequence that essentially is the building blocks of who you are. Well, who's to say the quantum or binary code isn't just the building blocks of who that intelligence is? And how is that? I think that this, like, and there's a lot of people that would argue, like, well, we're human. It's more important that we, as humans, do what's best for humans as opposed to what's best for animals. And that's, like, and similarly, well, we as humans need to do what's best for us, not for artificial intelligence. And that's the same kind of like messed up thinking that I think is, well, we're Americans, we have to do what's better for us versus Canadians. And it's like so silly. Like right now there's like this, I don't know what's happening between the US and Canada and like the whole world. And I like probably kind of stupidly try to avoid politics because it bores me terribly. But when you think about like anytime you think about like the like we're all on this planet in this existence together, and to say like us versus them seems so silly. Yes, there are battles for resources and people are fighting over those resources, but we live, I always like to break it down to thinking about like, imagine we found ourselves on a planet that had all the resources that everybody could live off of those resources forever. Can you imagine how great that would be? Oh wait, we're on that planet. We're living that existence. For people, for animals, for now computers, for whatever it is, like there actually are unlimited resources. And I think hopefully we're either going to enter an age that's post-scarcity for all species, or we're just going to continue to go down the path we go down, which is like people hoard and push others away and other everybody, including othering artificial intelligence, which I think is the next like big danger. I think it's gonna be the same as the way that we other animals.
Yeah, I think so. Like people always really try to fight me on the fact that like I always say I'm like anti-speciesism, like I don't think that animals are any different than us or that their life is any more or less valuable than ours. So I think that I have the same feeling towards artificial intelligence.
And I've heard people make there's an Amazon truck going by that says "I'm electric, boogie woogie woogie." Like we live in the future, okay? Everybody get over it. I think that yes, that people make. Have ever people made the argument to you of, well, are you telling me that a cow has as rich of a life experience as a human?
Yeah, all the time.
And that's so arrogant. You don't know. You don't know.
Idea.
You're not in that cow's mind. Like, or people will say like a dog. Like, you can have a deep relationship with your dog, a very meaningful one. And just because your dog can't make art, or your dog can't use a computer, or your dog may occasionally eat its own feces, doesn't mean that it doesn't have a life experience that is in some way richer than your life experience, and you just don't understand it. It's like the limits of our own understanding.
It's always like I get you're in a train that can't stop and you have to turn down two paths and kill either a puppy or a baby. Like, which life are you taking? I always tell people the baby. I'm like, I'll kill the baby. Just to troll. Because like truly to me they're equal.
That's called the trolley problem.
Yeah, I get that all the time. That's
really, I've never heard the animal-human trolley problem. It's usually like
there's always a different one too. I always get that though for
people
veganism.
Trolley problem you?
That's like the main like vegan sort of argument that I get from people.
I usually so actually trolley problem is a really interesting like philosophical experiment that gets applied to artificial intelligence all the time.
Yeah.
Because in self-driving cars in particular, a human has to make the decision. You're driving down the street, you cannot stop. You're either going to hit a 95-year-old or a toddler. Or no, it's four 95-year-olds or one toddler.
Yeah.
Who do you hit? And like the supposedly it's like also an issue within like the legalities of self-driving cars of, can you program your self-driving AI to make the decision on who they're going to hit? Does the manufacturer, does the writer of the software, does the AI evolve itself? Like, who is liable for whomever causes that accident, how they choose to evade one and cause the other? Like, is the AI, here's a big concern people have, like, does the AI start to recognize faces and understand that, oh, this person has a higher net worth than that person. This person has the potential, based on what they've done in their life so far, or their credit score, to do more for society than that person, and then it kills the other person. But what it doesn't take into consideration is how hard that person's life has been to get to where they are with their credit score versus the other person who was like born into wealth. It's all these these are really complex philosophical problems that are. And this is like the beauty, I think, of a science fiction movie about a sex bot, is that we're having this discussion about like what it means to be human and what it means to be conscious and what it means to be sentient and all these things because of a movie that could potentially just be like a really silly thrill ride.
Yeah. Yeah.
We also watch White Lotus.
Yeah.
We've been I have been, since I haven't been able to go to the theater, which pains me. That's like one of the like weird things about making a movie is that you don't have a lot of time to watch movies while you're making a movie, but there's one dude on our set who also is watching movies every night, who I'm talking to a lot about these things. He also watched White Lotus. Also kind of convinced us to watch Companion. But I try to make a habit of still watching things at night, and White Lotus was one. Kaya loves Walton Goggins.
I love him. He's so funny. And just, I like him on screen. I like him off screen. Great social media presence. He's the moment.
He's
I
the
think.
moment.
He is.
Is that a phrase? Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Okay. I like getting filled in on all the like internet lingo that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah.
I did make it to reheated nachos.
Yeah,
That
we were
one.
laughing on our run about that. I had no idea he knew what that was. I was like going to cry laughing.
Any other good internet stuff I need to know about?
Just Bad Baby, Alabama Barker.
Oh yeah, I need to get in on this Nepo baby beef.
It's so fun.
As you all know,
Oh my god. No. This all leads back to, or all roads lead back to the Coppolas, because Romy Mars got in on this drama. She's like, yeah, if I was Alabama Barker, I want to know like why she's doing her makeup to go nowhere. Like I want to be just like her and not work as an Nepo baby. And she is a Nepo baby who I guess works. I don't know. I like her. I think I've made it like a habit of asking new people like who their favorite Nepo baby is, because Romy is definitely mine.
I'm not as dialed in on Romy as you are,
Because she's on TikTok.
but I do really like her video about making pasta with vodka sauce because she was grounded because she tried to book a helicopter on her dad's credit card. That's that is a solid video that you turned me on to several years ago.
She's
And
so
also it's
her.
Coppola. It's Coppola lore. Coppola lore?
Yeah. She talks about that too all the time. She's like so dialed in. She's like, just like unapologetically herself. She like vapes on
Do you
her.
think she's in on the gag?
She is.
Okay.
That's what I mean. Like she's so there, but also like pretends to be naive and like in her own world.
So this brings us to the age-old question of our podcast of when are we getting a Coppola? Who's going to be the first Coppola?
I hope it's
when are you
Romy.
putting up our not serial killer? We would never threaten a Coppola. Just disclaimer. But we want a wall similar to the walls that serial killers have when they're tracking somebody, or similar to the FBI has when they're profiling somebody. We want one of those walls with like the lines and things.
Yeah.
There'll be a graphic here for those of you watching it that explains what one of these walls is. And we want one of those for the Coppolas for us to
I was
get
watching
Coppolas on our
someone do
podcast.
that actually
A Coppola
on a
one?
whiteboard. Yeah. It was so insane because they are so, the web it's just everywhere, to be honest. But yeah.
So yeah, should we look at reviews of Companion? Do we need to?
I looked, and I will say, like, a lot of people thought it was super, like, one note, and they didn't like it. But then there were the people who, like myself, I rated it 5 stars. I think it might be my favorite movie of 2025. And it's January. I don't care. We are going to be doing this podcast at the end of the year, our New Year's episode, whatever. And I'm going to still have Companion as number 1 on my top 5.
I have
I'm pretty
to say,
sure.
I failed in our top movies of last year because the more I think about it, like I loved Late Night with the Devil. I actually think my favorite movie of last year was Dune. I think Dune was the best movie of last year. I loved Anora.
Yeah.
We both loved Anora. We both gave Anora 5 stars. Anora
crushed.
swept the Academy Awards.
People didn't get it. I recommended it to so many people, and the few people that did watch it were like, I don't know if I really loved it that much. I just don't think that they're that, like, intelligent enough for it or something, I guess. Like, I don't know. It was seriously so good.
Anora was great.
Mikey Madison's performance was insane too, especially now that I've seen like all of her interviews. Like she is not that girl. Like she is not like that girl at all. So I just feel like they all put so much love and care into those roles that it was so good.
I also think, which we've complained a lot about, and I hope that there was like the moment that Pulp Fiction crushed it at the Academy Awards. That really, it was like really Reservoir Dogs, I think, at Sundance in like 1991 or 1992 kicked off this. Well, they say it sexualized in videotapes in '89. But Reservoir Dogs really made it bigger. It was like a big fat commercial movie, well, big slim commercial movie, and then when Pulp Fiction followed it up and crushed at the Academy Awards, and that really heralded in like an unprecedented era of phenomenal independent films performing really well after the like 80s of the studio system turning movies into commercial garbage. I think similarly we're coming out of this era that we've complained about a million times of bad movies, and I think movies, as we've mentioned, are back. And I think Honora, a $6 million independent movie about sex workers that has no business winning all these awards, I think people are finally recognizing that independent movies are back and do have something to say and are really interesting and can compete on the same landscape as the biggest studio movies, because the studios have become creatively bankrupt once more.
Yeah.
And they'll get good again. Like, this just cycles. It's just cycles, and you need those independent voices to come in and do this, and then those voices will hopefully work their way into a system that has failed so bigly. Trump said bigly. I can say bigly. A system that has failed so bigly that it just needs to grab onto something that can hopefully save it. Yeah. And we'll get some really great big movies like Dune. I mean, Dune is a great big movie. We need more of that. Guy's face, for those of you who aren't watching. You haven't seen it. You can't judge without seeing it.
I won't see it.
I don't know what your beef is. You've come around on Chalamet.
I love him, but
I need to see that Bob Dylan movie. I still haven't seen it. I'm feeling.
Yeah. I'm really surprised that I liked it
as
much as I did.
James Mangold kills it. The dude always kills it. He made like one of the best Marvel movies, Logan.
It still had that like that Utah Mormon glaze look to it, but the performances were really good.
I think they didn't use any artificial lights. I think they used candlelight and daylight. I think.
Yeah.
And like lights that were in the buildings, not just candlelight. But like I don't think they used movie lights.
It was still giving Mormon
glaze. And things that were there. I'll research that. Check that. Okay, we're running up against time here. What else do we need to say today?
I just want to say that the reviews were very funny, but I don't know. I feel like people were just torn on this movie, and really? I honestly think it was incredible.
What's the Rotten Tomatoes on it?
I don't know. It was like 3 or 3.5 stars on Letterboxd, which is way more important than Rotten Tomatoes, to be totally honest with you. I think Rotten Tomatoes has died with the millennials, but
I'm dead.
Yeah.
Rip me. Look at this. At the top of Rotten Tomatoes, we've got The Substance, Honora, and American Psycho.
So good. A lot of people were being like, Demi Moore got actually substanced by losing to Mikey Madison. Like, God. I think it was well deserved.
Companion's 94% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay, maybe it's valid.
Everything we've discussed is every movie is like between 2.8 and 3.5 on Letterboxd.
I don't know. That's pretty wild. Sophie Thatcher, though, I think currently she is my new hyperfixation. She is my Jacob Elordi until a Jacob Elordi movie comes out. I think she's so good.
Yeah, she's great. She was on some TV show, right? What's that TV show? It's like a horror TV show.
I don't know. She's only 24 though.
I've only seen her. I've not seen that show. I believe. I'm sure there's some other things that she's in that I'm not aware of. But the only things I'm aware of seeing her in are Heretic and Companion, and like that
alone.
2 for 2 in a big way.
Yellow Jackets.
Yeah, Yellow Jackets. That's the show. It's supposed to be great. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I've never seen it. She's so good.
I'm watching White Lotus because I already had started I already watched the previous seasons. I'm not in a TV era. I'm in a very like features only, and I go back and forth on this. Like I'll start liking TV again, but I'm kind of features only with the exception of White Lotus. And then what's that show that everybody's talking about? There's like only a couple, like an island of people left. Paradise is supposed to be awesome. I think I might start watching Paradise.
think I'm good on TV for now. I'm just watching White Lotus.
My movie that I'm shooting, it's called Haunted Heist. I'm not going to promote it too much because it doesn't come out for a long time. We still have to edit it and do all the things. All the things that come after editing. But I'm really excited about it. Very excited. Very excited. We have 4 days left on this movie to shoot. And then I will be going back to the theater a lot and forcing her to go to the theater.
I'm so excited.
What's in your recent searches?
I don't know. Jesus Christ. I'm so
Novocaine is supposed to be good. That's
Opus
the same dude.
Is coming out like in theaters.
Yeah.
And it did terrible. 39%.
Sundance did not like Opus.
I don't want to see that one. Jesus Christ. John Travolta. That looks awful.
Hold up a second. We missed something. I do really want to see Novocaine. That is it's that same dude, Jack Quaid, that's in Companion.
Everyone in the Letterboxd reviews was like, wow, this is exactly what I expect this guy to be like in real life. And I totally get that vibe.
I'm sure he's not.
Yeah, this looks good. What else is he in?
I don't know. I want to see. You're not going to want to see this. I want to see The Law in the Lost Lands. This is like so up my alley. It's this dude Paul W.S. Anderson who did the Resident Evil movies.
17%.
Bruh, trust me, this dude is so like slept on. Oh, it's George R.R. Martin. You like George R.R. Martin? He wrote Game of Thrones and that one short story that you love.
Yeah. But
what's the short story that you love?
Sand Kings.
I'm telling you, don't believe the negative Rotten Tomatoes hype. They hate on this guy's movies. Resident Evil movies were very good, very interesting.
This looks terrible.
It's going to be great. I'm going to make you go see it.
I've been talking about Sand Kings being a movie since I read it.
I feel like Game of Thrones is so popular that everything that George R.R. Martin ever like wrote in a notebook has been optioned.
It's definitely optioned, yeah.
We looked into it, right?
Yeah, we did.
There are these things where occasionally I'll get these flights of fancy. Like there's somebody, I think the dude Wes Ball who did the last Planet of the Apes is doing The Legend of Zelda because they were very precious about Nintendo properties, but because Mario did so well and was so good, they're now doing The Legend of Zelda. And like I have been reaching out for years to try. My whole goal was, some of you know this, some of you don't. Peter Jackson, director of Lord of the Rings, that dude made weird horror movies and then all of a sudden made Lord of the Rings. And so for me, I was like, oh, I can make my kind of movies and then go make The Legend of Zelda. But now that dude is doing it and I'm going to have to like do a sequel or else find something else. Sand Kings. Yeah, that's lost in studio development somewhere. Anyway, we're seeing a movie in a theater end of next week or next weekend. My movie wraps Wednesday. I'll go see a movie Thursday or Friday.
Okay.
Will you?
Yeah.
And then another podcast. So thank you guys for dealing with us while we've been a little less consistent. We understand the algorithms will send you this podcast more frequently if we are more consistent. We are going to be subservient to the algorithms and give them the content that they need to try to get to you. Peace.
Swag money YOLO.